Good morning from the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, and this is your Access and Privacy Online News Summary for Saturday, October 4th. It's another big week on the privacy and access front. Nova Scotia has introduced new legislation that its commissioner warns may actually weaken transparency. We'll follow that with access stories from across Canada, many powered by the Local Journalism Initiative. On the privacy front, we'll look at cases ranging from a high-profile banking breach to a local hockey livestream that's raising surveillance concerns. In the U.S., the slide toward autocracy continues, with lawsuits over voter data, federal rollbacks on voter rights, and even a lawsuit connecting Bass Pro Shops, Facebook, and Cambridge Analytica. And internationally, tech giants face fresh scrutiny over unsafe online environments. Britain reels from more data breaches, Afghanistan experiences a nationwide internet blackout, and the Associated Press shines a spotlight on the exploitation of women in Gaza. Let's dive in. We begin in Nova Scotia, where the government has tabled its first major overhaul of access and privacy law in 25 years. The new Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, or FOIPOP, consolidates multiple laws and makes the commissioner an officer of the legislature, a positive step. The province said this will increase the independence of the office. It also extends privacy oversight to municipalities, introduces mandatory breach notifications, and increases fines. That said, the commissioner warns the bill could weaken transparency. It removes the unique clause requiring disclosure of all government information, subject only to limited exceptions. Critics say this deletion could water down accountability and undermine the court's ability to interpret the law in favor of openness. The change does bring Nova Scotia in line with other provinces that have weaker legislation. The bill also fails to grant order-making power, something Premier Tim Houston once promised in opposition, meaning citizens must still go to court if denied access. This while deadlines are being stretched from 30 calendar to 30 business days, which could delay the release of requested records by over a week. The new law comes into effect in 2027. FIPA will be watching closely, and you can find a host of links on our website for further background. We'd like to think Nova Scotians and the Premier would like something better. In our general view, any legislative change that lowers the bar and aspires for mediocrity rather than best practices creates a race to the bottom. Turning to access news from across the country with stories from the Local Journalism Initiative. Staying on the East Coast, in New Brunswick, Natalie Sturgeon, LGI reporter at the St. Croix Courier, reports the Local Governance Commission has called for mandatory training for municipal leaders and staff. The training would cover conduct, conflicts of interest, and, importantly, right to information obligations. Observers say it could reduce costly mistakes and help municipalities navigate their new responsibilities. A report says the training should happen within the first 6 months of an election or appointment, and failure to complete the training should come with the appropriate sanctions. Next from Ottawa and Sanal Gupta, LGI reporter at Canada's National Observer. Health Canada is seeking exemptions from the federal Indigenous procurement target, citing shortages of Indigenous suppliers in scientific and mental health services. Since 2021, federal departments have been obligated to award at least 5% of their annual contracts to Indigenous businesses to support economic reconciliation. Health Canada met the federal target this year. However, documents obtained by Canada's National Observer through the Federal Access to Information Act reveal the department is facing supplier shortages in certain specialized areas. As a result, the department has asked for exemptions for 2025 to 2026 that would exclude around $49 million from the spending target. Indigenous leaders are pushing back, saying the issue isn't capacity but systemic barriers, and that Indigenous-led procurement systems are long overdue. Meanwhile, Ed Smith, LGI reporter at The Pointer in Ontario, reports that a Freedom of Information request has uncovered vague and opaque expense accounts in St. Catharines. Mayor Matt Cisco's discretionary spending, including a publicly funded European trip, has raised questions of oversight. Critics warn the lack of receipts and detail allows misuse of taxpayer funds to go unchecked. Former Mayor Walter Sendzik posted detailed expense reporting online during the latter part of his tenure, a practice that improved public access to spending information. That effort towards transparency ended when Cisco assumed office, leaving residents once again reliant on opaque summaries and FOI requests to understand how public funds are used. And in Manitoba, Maggie McIntosh, LGI reporter at the Winnipeg Free Press, used FOI to review photo radar hotspots near school zones. Thousands of tickets are being issued in these areas, while detractors claim signage is poor or backlit, fueling criticism that enforcement looks more like a money grab than a safety measure. The area around River Elm School topped the list of school zones with the highest number of traffic infractions recorded by the Winnipeg Police Service between September 1st, 2024 and June 30th of this year. There were 5,833 violations there, according to enforcement data on the 10 city locations with the highest number of infractions. On the Canadian privacy front, headlines span high-profile breaches to community-level surveillance. First, while the RCMP has charged a former RBC employee with accessing Prime Minister Mark Carney's banking data, they are still seeking additional information from the Crown in the case. 23-year-old Ibrahim El Hakim is charged with fraud over $5,000, unauthorized use of a computer, identity theft, and trafficking in identity information. The accused allegedly misused internal systems to view accounts and commit fraud, a stark reminder of insider threats to personal information. The case is set to return to court next month. In Ontario, Lee Griffey, LGI reporter at the Woodstock Ingersoll Echo, and Brian Williams, LGI reporter at the London Free Press, report that Oxford County is recovering from a cyber attack that may have exposed data from up to 4,000 current and former staff. Officials are working with third-party experts, and while systems remain online, residents are being warned to stay vigilant. The county said it was still investigating whether and to what extent the personal information of other groups may have also been compromised, noting it would carry out notifications as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Carl Clutchy, LGI reporter at the Chronicle Journal in Thunder Bay, sends along a report as Fort William First Nation is encouraging residents to recycle electronics. The recycling initiative serves as a good reminder to protect the environment by properly recycling your electronic waste and hazardous items. But even these smaller community initiatives show the importance of privacy protection and awareness, as they provide a great reminder to be sure to erase your personal data first. And Galen Simmons, LGI reporter at the Wilmot Tavistock Gazette, reports that Wellesley, Ontario, plans to install permanent livestream cameras at a junior hockey arena, and that has some blowing the whistle on the play. The Township Recreation Director explained the agreement with the township, and the Applejacks requires certain protections against the potential for live streaming outside of Applejacks games. Past cases in Waterloo and Kitchener showed live streams accidentally capturing children's camps, prompting calls for strict safeguards. A legal review is underway to ensure privacy is protected before broadcasts begin. And now to the United States, where this week's headlines highlight the steady erosion of democratic safeguards and the clash between privacy rights and government power. The Justice Department is suing 8 states, including California, New York, and Pennsylvania, demanding access to detailed voter records, names, addresses, driver's license numbers, and even Social Security digits. The Justice Department also accused the states of failing to respond sufficiently to questions about the procedures they take to maintain voter rolls. State officials call the demands, quote, an unprecedented and unlawful power grab, end quote, warning it could be used to intimidate voters and compromise election privacy. All 8 states being sued are led by Democratic governors, except for New Hampshire, which is led by a Republican. At the same time, a lawsuit in Connecticut reveals the National Shooting Sports Foundation secretly built a vast database of millions of gun owners using warranty cards and retailer data. The warranty card provided a wealth of information about firearms buyers, including contact information, gender, age, income, interests, what vehicles they own, and why they bought a gun, according to the lawsuit. That database was later shared with political consultants, including Cambridge Analytica, to target ads that helped mobilize voters as far back as the 2000 election. The suit alleges a fundamental betrayal of gun owners' privacy, turning consumer information into a partisan weapon. The lawsuit, filed in Connecticut on September 22nd, seeks class action status on behalf of gun owners nationwide, seeking damages in excess of $5 million, but does not provide a specific dollar amount. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is moving quickly to strip union protections for federal prison workers and to eliminate hundreds of jobs at the Voice of America, the government-funded broadcaster founded to counter Nazi propaganda during World War II. The Federal Bureau of Prisons said it is canceling a collective bargaining agreement with its workers and stripping them of union rights. Meanwhile, a federal judge agreed to temporarily suspend the Trump administration's plan to eliminate hundreds of jobs at the agency that oversees Voice of America. Courts have intervened, but critics warn these moves are part of a broader campaign to weaken independent voices and consolidate executive control. Taken together, these stories show how data, labor rights, and media institutions are being reshaped in ways that concentrate power at the top, deepening concerns that the United States is sliding further toward authoritarian rule. Internationally, two stories dominate. First, tech giants face renewed pressure over unsafe online environments. OpenAI is rolling out parental controls for ChatGPT for a safer and more age-appropriate experience, while Meta faces a damning report alleging Instagram's design choices make the platform unsafe for teens. Both moves come amid lawsuits, whistleblowers, and a global concern over youth safety online. In the United States, the Federal Trade Commission has even opened an inquiry into several tech companies about the potential harms to children and teenagers who use their AI chatbots as companions. Meanwhile, Instagram pushes its disappearing messages feature to teenagers, with an animated reward as an incentive to use it. According to a report, disappearing messages can be dangerous for minors and serve the dual purpose of being used for drug sales and grooming. In Britain, Harrods, the luxury department store, has confirmed a customer data breach as one of several cyber attacks recently targeting major retailers. The company said late Friday that some names and contact details of its online customers were taken after one of its third-party provider systems was compromised. It added that the incident was isolated and has been contained, without providing more details. Harrods said the data breach wasn't connected to an incident in May, when it restricted internet access across its sites as a precautionary measure following an attempt to gain unauthorized access to its systems. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, the Taliban imposed, then partially lifted, a nationwide internet blackout. The shutdown crippled banking, aid distribution, and communications, with the UN warning it deepens the humanitarian crisis and violates the right to information. The UN also warned that the blackout is crippling banking and financial systems, isolating women and girls, limiting access to medical care and remittances, and disrupting aviation. However, confusion surrounded the state of internet connectivity when some networks were apparently restored following the outage. To add to that, what claimed to be a Taliban statement surfaced denying reports that the blackout was a deliberate move and saying old fiber optic cables are worn out and being replaced. This was also later proven to be false. We close in Gaza, where the Associated Press reports disturbing accounts of women being exploited for aid. Amid the ongoing genocide, women describe being pressured into sexual encounters by men claiming to control access to food, medicine, or jobs. Psychologists working in Gaza say they've treated dozens of such cases, including pregnancies resulting from exploitation. Aid groups stress they have zero-tolerance policies, but note sexual abuse often rises in humanitarian crises. Local organizations warn these cases are vastly underreported, reflecting only the tip of the iceberg. The groups also say Israel's restrictions on aid and its military operations have created the dire crisis in Gaza. As hunger and desperation spread, women in particular say they've been pushed to make impossible decisions. Some women said the men identified as aid workers and took their phone numbers when they went to register for assistance, later calling and attempting to exploit them. Several women said they weren't able to identify which aid group the men seemed to be associated with. As desperation grows, these impossible choices underscore how privacy, dignity, fear of reprisal, and survival are deeply intertwined in conflict zones. As always, we hope today's stories help you stay informed about the latest issues surrounding privacy, information management, and public transparency. To help us keep the mics on, subscribe to FIBA News Monitoring or consider making a donation. Our writer is Sean Fisk. Original music for today's show comes from Breakmaster Cylinder. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, your host and producer. Thank you for joining us. And to our listeners, stay safe and stay informed.